Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Johnson. I want to start my story at around age 24, 25, something like that. Never was good at math anyway. And I'd be older, but I was sick a couple years. But one of the most difficult things for me at 24, 25 years old, I was in between my two pastorates. I'd been asked to be a pastor of a church. I built one up in Chicago, and then a suburb of Chicago, somebody had asked me to come to their church and be their pastor, and they would offer me more money. And being a young guy thinking, well, money is what counts here, I decided to take them up on their offer and had to say goodbye to this church that I had tried to build up the last 2 years. And I'd done a relatively good job if you make that a status. I had taken the church 2 years ago. When I took the church, I had 6 people in the congregation. By the time I was going to leave the church, I think my last service, I had something like 287 people there, and a lot of them not wanting me to go. But after all, this other church had offered me more money, and the first church I was at didn't have a lot of money. So I took them up on it, and this was my last service. And then I headed down, and the new church, it turned out, just like the old church that I just left, was having difficulty getting people in. They didn't have a lot of people either. They had more than 6, fortunately. But it was about 22 people, something like that. So it was a small church. And even worse than that, because it was a suburb of Chicago, it was in some cornfields towards Indiana where, the houses were sparse. They were far apart from each other. You had to do a lot of traveling to knock on the doors. And I would take the list of what the church had of the old members, and I'd go from house to house knocking on doors. Hi, I'm your new pastor. There are 2 things that I had trouble with as a new pastor. Number 1 was I learned in the pastorate how much I didn't know. And boy, let me tell you, to this day, I know there's a lot of things that I just don't know. All kinds of stuff that I've got to learn, and I'm still learning. I guess till we get to heaven we will be, and I don't know if we won't still be then. C.S. Lewis believes that we're being trained down here for what we'll be doing up there. And even more than that, who knows what up there is? I mean, we could be ending up going to galaxies to straighten beings out. Who knows? It's hard to let your mind wander and try to figure it out. So the one thing that I had difficulty with was understanding how little I know, and I have trouble with that even today. I may be educated, I may have been through a lot of experience, and yet the same thing pops up every day, how little I know or understand, which is humbling. And then the other thing was the intrusion I had to make on these farmers' families. Now, they weren't all farmers, of course. Many of them were businessmen, many of them educated salesmen, many of them had their own companies, their own factories, and worked in regular franchises like we're very familiar with. But one of the biggest problems I had was dropping in and then figuring out some way that I was going to talk to them about Jesus. I've never been able to straighten that out. To this day, I've taken Kennedy's course on evangelism explosion. I've taken Bill Bright's course on soul witnessing and how to use little booklets, to ask them if they understand their way to heaven. I've tried to figure out all kinds of courses and took all kinds of things that work. I still teach for 3 seminaries, and I still don't have answers to all that. Bible studies, I work with businessmen, and sometimes the question comes up, well, how do we share Jesus with somebody that we don't know? And then I've got to do some thinking, and I don't have all the answers for that. But anyway, as a pastor, I was really having problems. I'd knock on a door, maybe 5 in the afternoon, 6, 7, 8. I'd spend one evening doing my best to reach as many people as I could, to knock on doors and say, listen, come to church on Sunday. Well, the poor farmer had worked his head off. Sunday he'd gotten up, he'd done his chores. He didn't want to get up. He wanted to go back to bed, wanted to rest, wanted to relax, wanted to read the paper. They had papers back then. We almost don't have any paper. They didn't even have any internet. But anyway, I digress. The point is, I was uncomfortable. I didn't know exactly how to share with them who Christ was or what Christ had done. I'd find ways and reasons to talk about it. And even if I found a good way to wedge Jesus into the conversation and been pretty wise about how to interject, the farmer was uncomfortable. The wife was uncomfortable. Kids were uncomfortable. Who is this guy that comes in here, talks to us about death, talks to us about heaven and hell, talks to us about Jesus and our sins? I struggled with it. I just wasn't sure how to make it work. Now, I've gotten used to it over a period of time. In other words, I've even learned that even if the conversation comes up, I can be more silent than to say anything, because my normal daily life is preaching the gospel anyway. And I'm sure that's what the young pastorates that I had was training me. My point is, and one of the reasons that you're looking at me on this YouTube video, thank God for YouTube, they've been very good to me, and as helpful as can be. They help me get my message out. They help me to talk about Jesus. I'm able to wander around. If you haven't looked at my other channel yet, please do, and browse through it from time to time. See what you like and let me know. But this channel is a place where I can grab a little personal refuge, I think. I'm experimenting. I'm hoping what I can do is kind of make a legacy of thoughts. On this channel, my hope is, what I can do is talk to you about things that don't necessarily have a spiritual connection, although everything has a spiritual connection. But I have these thoughts that don't always fit in, like experiences with horses I used to own, or my pets, my dogs, my cats. The cat, 21 years he lived. I miss him. He died in my hands. Talk to you about, I was going to write a book. I've been asked to write a book about all these different thoughts that don't quite fit into the pastorate, or experiences that I've had that maybe you and I might be interested in sharing. Especially I could share. It kind of becomes my legacy. I've got to admit that YouTube can be my lack of desire to sit over the computer and type the book out. Just talk to you about it anyway. I want to talk to you about thoughts, ideas, various, no particular subject. And it's a way for you to get to know me and understand some of the things that I've said and done. And the more I get into it, the more you'll see and understand what I mean. And not that it's necessarily important, but if you want to, it's a way to get to know me. It's a way for me to get to know me too. So we're going to talk, and I'm just going to share with you not necessarily religious thoughts, but general thoughts. Now, it may have a lot of religion in it, because God is a big part of my life. But at the same time, I don't know who you are, what you believe. You may find that sitting and listening to me will spark some thoughts in you, will get you going, and maybe take you off on a different direction. What do I hope to accomplish? I don't know. And I'm not sure it matters. I'm just going to share. And I hope you enjoy. I'm going to tell you some jokes. I'm sure you're looking forward to that. I'm also going to tell you some stories that have affected me and why I think the way I do, and who I am. And if you don't enjoy it, then turn it off. Don't spend your time But if you want to sit with me, you want to hear some of my random thinking, and it's not something that I have to necessarily prepare or control or put together like I do sermons and lessons and what have you, as I usually do. It's just a chance for me to sit and relax and have coffee with you. So do me a favor. Make yourself a cup of coffee. Get me a cup of coffee. We'll sit down and have coffee together, and I'll talk to you.